Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome, everyone, to Satsang. So, who would like to open this conversation tonight? The self with the self. Hello, Suresh.
So I actually had a heart bypass operation on Monday.
Well, you look very good.
Yeah, very quick recovery.
Very nice.
But some questions came up. It's interesting. While the doctors were performing the bypass, they were aware of this body, but I had no personal connection at that time with
Yes,
So the body was lying there, and the world dimension was aware of it, but not Suresh.
yes.
So it seems like
Not the mind of Suresh.
huh?
Not the mind of Suresh.
Not the mind of Suresh, yes. So the mind seemed to have been completely no projection of the mind.
Yeah,
But there still seems to be, the prana was going on because
yeah,
obviously there was breathing.
yeah,
So the mind and intellect, and I would even say uh, uh, sense of ahankara, sense of doership was not there. There may have been chidabhasa because the breathing was happening, prana was happening. I don't know.
yeah.
So I'm asking you this question. I'm going to set it up.
Okay.
And of course, when the effects, when waking consciousness came back, then the world appearance also came back
Correct. They come simultaneously, yes.
simultaneously. So my question really is, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, is that the experience where uh, the sage is unaware of body and world, but it's there. A third party can see it.
Yes,
Somebody enters your room, they see
yes,
you're meditating, they see the body, but you're not aware.
yes.
And if that is the case, when waking consciousness reappears, are we always subject to the appearance of duality? We know it's a mirage. We know it's a mirage, but it
Yes,
still appears.
yes,
So I'm just trying to clarify that, which means if you don't want any appearance of the world, one has to be in nirvikalpa all the time.
correct. Which is why Sri Ramana said, if you really want to if you really want this process to move along quickly, live as though you are asleep, even when you are awake. And this was what he was pointing at.
But when you're living as though you're asleep, even if you're awake, you still see appearances, correct? Versus
Correct.
versus
Yes.
complete nirvikalpa where there's nothing. So that was my question. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just to clarify for everyone, nirvikalpa samadhi is the state of, you can say, absorption, um, in which all of the sense doors, including the mind, have closed. But there still is there's no perception in that moment of awareness being there necessarily, but there also was no break in awareness. When one returns from nirvikalpa samadhi, there is also the recognition that there was no break in awareness, and that all the sense doors were closed and the mind was inactive. This is nirvikalpa samadhi. It's a state of absorption. Something that's interesting about these states and about this question that you're asking is that the experience of the mind makes all of these distinctions as the experience goes along. But if looking more deeply, Suresh, you actually understand that which was aware, or consciousness itself, on the much deeper level, like on the level of nirvikalpa samadhi, it was not shut off. They can shut off the mind. Doctors can shut off the mind with anesthesia. They can make it possible for them to keep the body going so that all the breathing is all the natural functions are happening. This is one of the miracles of modern surgery. But the mind is completely inactive and it's very targeted. But it doesn't shut off consciousness, does it?
No.
No. You absolutely know that you were, even when you were not having any experiences. So this is very akin to falling into deep sleep. When you fall into deep sleep, you have no awareness of anything that's happening in the senses. But of course, if someone walks in the room or a loud noise happens, instantly awareness is there. So you know that consciousness is there, doesn't need the mind. It only needs the mind in order to integrate what's happening in awareness. If a loud sound happens or a person walks into the room or something like that. But in deep sleep, what the vasanas or the tendencies fall back into the heart and they remain there until something calls them out. Now, the something that calls them out is what you pointed to in terms of the experience of duality. There can't be any experience at all without the experience in the waking state, without the experience of duality when the waking state is there. Because that's the way that you can say awareness itself. I'm not sure that's exactly the right way to phrase it, but awareness itself becomes aware of itself through the subject-object division. So when you talk about a state of deep sleep or a state of nirvikalpa samadhi or absorption, what you're talking about is consciousness which is resting in its natural or native state, in which there's no perception of difference, of separation, of duality, of any of that. It all rises up spontaneously as an expression of, you can say, awareness wanting to know itself. And so the only way that the totality or the one or the self can know itself is by creating some sort of a division, large or small, that says this is the subject and that's the object. So when one says, when Bhagavan says remain in your life as though you are asleep, he doesn't necessarily mean remain unconscious in the deep sleep state. He means remain unreactive or non-reactive to anything that rises on the screen of awareness. So remain neutral. In Zen, they call this the field of basic equality. And it's a very specific practice. In other words, one is looking at all things that are available on the screen of awareness with an absolute sense of equality or non-reactivity. And what this does for us is it gives us the opportunity to see that consciousness, which is always here, cannot know itself unless it somehow creates this subject-object, not consciousness, but awareness itself, because consciousness has no attributes, it doesn't move, it has no desire, it doesn't need anything. So it's really awareness itself, which wants to know itself in the waking state. And so it moves in some way into this subject-object relationship. It can do that in a very, very fine way, like a very subtle way, or it can do it in a much larger way. All of this that you are seeing, whatever is happening at any given moment, this moment, in the here and now, what you are always seeing is the dynamic display of consciousness itself. In other words, there is no experience possible without the prior condition of awareness or the prior condition of consciousness, which has no attributes. Awareness has attributes, consciousness has no attributes. So the prior condition of consciousness is necessary. Where we get lost is we think that what we're looking at in what we can call the world of form is real. We think that what's here is real, that what's around us is real. If we could see it correctly, and you can see this correctly, you've contemplated long enough, you can see that what you're really looking at is the dynamic display of consciousness. And that has no foundation, which can be called real, because it is constantly changing, coming and going, rising and falling, coming together and dissipating. And so for this reason, there's nothing in the display on the screen of consciousness or the screen of awareness which can said to be real. You can't say it's real, because there is nothing which has a self nature. It exists on its own. Everything exists because you are here. Because that which you come into the world with as awareness every time you wake up, or when you come back from a surgery like this, what you come into the world as is that dynamic display of the energy of consciousness. It's not really you. It's not really an experience that's happening. It has that feeling of being that way. But if you look deeply through this mechanism of inquiry, who is having this experience, who is hearing this, seeing this, tasting it, touching it, smelling it, thinking it, feeling it. If you continue with that inquiry through all of these experiences, you see that in truth, there is something which is prior, it's not a thing, but there is an experience prior to all of these sensory experiences, which is unmoving, unborn, eternal, and that is consciousness itself, or being, or the self. Having a surgery like this and going in and out of these manufactured states of awareness can be very helpful for this, because there's a way in which it helps us to, it slowly begins to dawn on us that even though the shutting off of the mind can be engineered, the recognition of being can't be. It isn't shut off. We don't feel what's happening in the body. That's the intention of it. Just like we don't feel what's happening in the body when we sleep in deep sleep at night. So we voluntarily go into these states, into a state of not knowing every night, and we're happy to do it, and we enjoy doing it. But somehow, when we go in and out of these states, either in a state of nirvikalpa samadhi or in a state of chemically induced surgery, we do somehow come. I don't know how this happens. I've had this experience several times myself. I've had a lot of surgery, as many people know, in my life. So, but there is this recognition that something is there prior, that in order for us to know anything at all, it has to shine its light of awareness on the objects that are on the screen of awareness. And we are that.
So it makes a lot of sense that, Bhagwan said, what's really happening is non-reactivity, non-doership, but there's still this appearance. But there's another, and I don't know if I'm getting too technical about this, but the Ajatavada school, which says everything is a superimposition, when I see that there's no snake on the rope, at that point, the snake disappears completely. There's no possibility of the snake reappearing.
Yes.
So is this like a mirage that one sees but knows doesn't exist? Or is it like the rope where one doesn't even see the snake?
So all of these ways of describing subtle aspects of our experience are all leading us to this place of true recognition that there is no snake, there is no rope, there is no mirage. That the only way that truth or the self can be intuited is through silence. So we use these metaphors like you just described to try to help us get from the gross to the subtle, and to gain some perspective on how mind interplays with vasanas or tendencies, right? It's a tendency to see a snake rather than a rope. It's a tendency to see a rope rather than a snake. It's a tendency to see a mirage when one knows that there's nothing there. So these are just tendencies. When we know the reality, the dream is known to be a dream. So it makes no difference whether one sees a snake or a rope or a mirage or no snake or no rope or no mirage. The truth recognizes that the whole interplay is a dream, in the sense that it's simply coming and going. We're not saying it doesn't exist. In the dream state, we know that we still exist. In the dream state, we fully believe we exist, don't we? When we're having a dream. It's only when we wake up from the dream, we instantly know that was a dream. So this is also like that. The instant that you wake up to the recognition that there is only the supreme, or there is only being consciousness, or there is only the self, the instant that that is known to be the reality, not with the mind, although conceptually with the mind, that's a good place to start, to keep reminding yourself that this is that there is more to this display on the screen of awareness than appears to the eye, to the ear, to the nose, to the mind. There's more here than that. And so if we keep going, who is hearing, who is seeing, who is tasting, who is touching, who is thinking, who is doing, who am I, who am I, who am I? If we keep going, we ultimately come to realize that all of this is the display of consciousness. There's nothing else going on here. And so it's not, so we can't say with any certainty, that's a rope, that's a snake, that's a mirage, that's this, that's that. We can't say that with any certainty, because we know that that can change shape instantly, because it's a manifestation of awareness. It's a manifestation of prior consciousness, which is just playing and is displaying itself in some way. So there are all these schools of thought about how this all happens, and there's a lot of arguments about why it happens and what's the purpose of it happening. But I really encourage you to just remember you are that which is aware. However the mind, however the traditions, however the religions, however the philosophers explain the functioning of mind, body, and world, in the final analysis, there's only one thing you can know for certain about it, and avoid all of those arguments and all that hair splitting. And that's for you to know here, now, in this moment. That which is aware is here. It's here now. No matter how I describe it, no matter whether I think it's a snake or a rope, it's the awareness itself, which is the prior condition. So keep coming back to that.
Seems that if this projection is superimposition, then there's only one. There's no subject object.
Correct. So, and
The,
no
the one
superimposition.
seeing the superimposition is also the one that is inhering in itself when there's no superimposition. So,
Yes.
so maybe that's the way to not have any sense of duality in appearance.
Sure. Yes. And that's sort of what I was pointing to when I said, understand that all of this, what you're calling a superimposition, I don't give it that strong a foundation, or that strong I don't give it that much strength or that much power. I simply recognize that it now, in this moment, this is the display of consciousness on the screen of awareness. I don't have to know what its nature is or why it's there or what its meaning is or what its purpose is. I can simply know that this is the display of the Supreme. And then I have the opportunity of remaining as this Supreme Self, because I don't have any need or desire or tendency to get involved in whatever the display is. I can still interact with it. I can still play in it. I can still be involved in the Leela of it, but I don't have any emotional investment in it. I am that which is aware of whatever the display is. I have no relationship with the display at all. The display is the display is the display. It's the manifestation of life itself, or the Supreme, or of consciousness itself. There's no distinction, there's no separation, there are not two. There's just the display and the recognition of the awareness that is here witnessing the display. That's it. They aren't separate, they are the same, because at that point, one realizes that the display and the awareness of the display are actually the same thing. One does not exist without the other. So they are in that way unified. Just keep going. However you get there, however you continue to, it's like using a piece of sandpaper on a block of wood. You don't necessarily see a lot of movement in terms of the wood, but if you just keep using that sandpaper on that block of wood, eventually that block of wood disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why it's important to keep engaged in the kind of inquiry that you're engaged in, wanting to know, wanting to see, in essence, wanting to say, show me the real. Is this the real? It's like, that's what you're questioning. Is this the real? Is this the real? If I look at it like this, what happens? If I look at it like that, what happens? If I think of it this way, what happens? If I think of it that way, what happens? So that you keep breaking down the tendency within the samskaras, within the body-mind complex, for things to want to solidify into a position or a point of view, until you come to the one recognition, which is that which is aware is here now, and it is the foundation of all that appears. Because once that happens for you on a very profound level, everything changes. Now, you still wake up in the morning, but now you wake up from your sleep or from your dream, and you've just woken up into another dream. And because that you've woken up into another dream, you don't buy the dream in a way. You play in the dream, just like you do in your dream, in your sleeping dream. You play in the dream. It feels as though it has some form or some shape or some purpose or some meaning, but you know that it doesn't, because you have awakened from that. So the display can be whatever it is, and you're happy. You have no more fear. You don't really particularly care what the display is. You are simply here. Not you as a person, but awareness, that which is aware, is simply here. It doesn't need to take the form or shape of a person or a set of experiences or a set of beliefs or points of view. It can. Everything is, everything that we do is a point of view in a certain way, you can say. But there isn't a belief behind it that I am this which I'm experiencing, or I am this which I'm thinking, or I'm this which I'm feeling. It's much more subtle than that. There is simply this awareness. And this awareness, so it's like it's as though you're living as a giant sphere, and everything that you're seeing is within that sphere, but nothing that you're seeing fills that space. No matter how blissful or how uncomfortable or how painful or, how threatening it seems, it doesn't fill that space. There's nothing that fills that space except the awareness itself. And that doesn't fill a space. It goes on eternally. It goes on continuously. It was here before. It will be here after, whatever this body mind does. So keep sanding on that block of wood and to understand what's happening, and you will, because that's the nature of mind. Mind does point us in the right direction. That's why Bhagwan and so many other sages have said, that we use a thorn to remove a thorn. And so all of the thorns are really in the mind, in the misunderstanding that's happening. When we have certain experiences, there's a misperception or a misconception that happens. And so the thorn that removes the thorn is this kind of sanding on the block.
Right.
Seeing the untruth seeing the untruth in the unreal. And that happens because the reason the sanding is happening is because we're trying to see life and experience, and our misunderstanding tell us that which is unreal is the real. This is the foundation of I am the body, I am the mind, I am the emotions, I am the experiences.
Mhm.
Right? That's the unreal through misunderstanding. And when we come to see the real, which is that all of this is consciousness itself manifesting as the display of its own nature, then everything changes. Everything changes because we are seeing the real. We are seeing the real in the real. We're not seeing the unreal as the real.
Now, is there a point at which, so the question comes up, seeing the display, does that suggest that there might still be some subtle vasanas versus that prompt the display
Yeah,
versus
not really, because the vasanas are described as the tendencies that are associated with a particular body mind or a particular rebirth, a particular karmic continuance that's going on. And at the point that one sees the totality of it all, the oneness of it all, the unity of it all, what the definition of the oneness of it all is that there is no me. So this ends the karma, it ends the vasanas, it ends all of this because there's no identification with any of that.
Okay, that's clear. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Rishi.
Risha,
Greetings to all.
hello.
Thank
Go ahead. It's just going to take me a minute to get you up on my screen here. So just go ahead.
So I've loved this discussion so much about the dream and the dreaming. I just have a few words to report
Okay.
about my progress. So I have awoken. I awoke in the dream, and I found myself awake. And then I took this invitation to go deep into the silence in me. And when I did, I felt the oneness. I felt the unimportance of the rest of the dream that I had wakened from. And I just keep going in and out of that state. Sometimes I'm back dreaming, and sometimes I'm awake, and very often I go into the dreaming again. I go into the stillness again. It's just beautiful.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it. That's it. Now it just keeps going on like this, but this is an ever expanding recognition now.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that there's anything to really expand, but it feels like that. It feels like there's an opening, right? And that opening now just can go on forever. It can just go on eternally. It does go on eternally. Yeah.
And there's
Very
there's an ease to it now, without stressing that I'm doing it right, or that, I'm missing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I feel that ease and
Yeah.
grace.
And you know you're here, right?
Yes.
Yes. It's really interesting for people because people think that uh, there's going to be, in some cases there's going to be this big bang. And to a certain degree that's true, but there also is just this recognition of here nowness. And one begins to see that one is here now and everything is fine. And all the fear that one was trying to avoid or trying to alleviate with this or that or the other thing, whether it's spiritual practices or drugs and alcohol, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm just here and I'm happy and I can feel the presence of my own being, and I can be in the silence of my own being. I can be here as life itself, in a way, you can say.
And it's still fun and exciting.
Yeah, more so because there's no worry around it.
That's right.
You're not afraid of losing it, I imagine now.
That's true. Thank you. Yes.
Very nice. Thank you, Risha. Thank you for sharing. Nice to see that your eyes are open now. I can see the light in your eyes. I can feel it. Nowhere to go, no one to be, nothing to do. Just enjoy. Live happily in whatever is here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Who is this? Frank? Frank Joseph?
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Rishiji.
Hi.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
And thank you everyone for being here as well. Wow. So I have a question. I had the privilege to come and meet you in Arunachala last year. I lived in India. And for me, I have come in contact with this place of being and joy and freedom and liberation from previous karmas. And I could have sat for a very long time and just sat in the bask in that silence and presence. The path it's okay. So in preface, it appeared that there was still emotion, and I went along with this motion
Yes.
with other beings that had identified objects around this path of emotion that this being was a part of. And so I
Okay.
played out a lot more karmas.
Okay.
And I did lots of great alchemy, and I devoted totally to the silence and to the love. And what was interesting though is that in any moment I could get there, but then coming back, getting involved with the mind, with the body, with relationships, I do notice a density.
Yes.
And this density, I realize though, has a lot of like, I don't know, I would say that even though the material world is a playground, it is very annoying to not be good at it, to not go with the ever changing of the energy flows and to get more favorable flow.
Yeah.
So then this little threads of the ego come where it's like I should be competent enough to utilize the laws of the mind and the body. So I have the question is that is there laws of the mind and the body that the awareness can play into, having realized that I am here, all-encompassed being.
There appear to be laws of the mind and body. Yes. And that and one can even learn on some level to master them. The shortcoming that particular way has is that everything which is born, everything which comes into being, is in its own nature impermanent and temporary. And so it's said in the tradition that one should not wish to be a god, because even the gods have to face the end of their reign. So even though one can structure one's being in a very pleasurable or happy way for days, weeks, months, years, or eons, because of the temporary nature or the impermanent nature of that which rises and stays for a while and falls, ultimately disappointment will follow, or death, or whatever you want to call it, will follow. This is why the sages like Bhagwan, Sri Ramana Maharshi, have always said, don't bother. If you master all of the worlds, you will still at some point need to ask yourself, who am I? Because all of the ways of the mind and body will eventually bring you back to asking this question. And the reason that you come back to asking this question is because all the ways, all the laws, all the whatever of the mind and body will ultimately fail. And so in all the traditions, both in Vedanta and in the Buddhist world, all of the traditions say, be prepared to fail over and over and over. And the opportunity that creates for us is the opportunity to say, then who is this I? Who is it that can create in the world and using one's will? Who is it that fails to create? Who does this? Who does that? So that's why Bhagwan referred to the path of Advaita as the direct path. He said, you can go and play in the fields of creation, certainly. You can do whatever you like, or you can just ask the question, who am I? And let the creation take care of itself. And you said you found that you have some difficulty when you go into those fields of
It's like a grid. It's
yeah.
like a whole grid, and then There's a
So
lot of absence of fear, but yeah, it drops me down to recreating what my human would play out in the past. But it's strange because I'm no longer attached to any entity around it, but it's recreating itself in the reality that I feel is constricting the expansion of my consciousness and service that naturally wants to come from my being. So I feel limited in this
limited,
perplexing
absolutely,
experience.
absolutely.
It,
So all this means, Frank, is that you don't have sufficient stability yet. Okay, you've seen the truth of it. You've understood something about how this all works, but there's not sufficient stability that you can go back out into any kind of experience and not have the tendencies of your prarabdha karma to come up and capture you again. So all I would say to you is just continue sanding that block of wood where you know that you are the self, but it's important that you really begin to ask yourself before you engage in certain activities, behaviors, tendencies from the past. Is that really what I want to do, or would I prefer to spend my time keeping quiet or asking the question, who am I? What am I? Just noticing, I am aware. All of this is going on. I'm not telling you don't let it go on. I'm telling you, ask this question, am I aware? Remain aware. Yes, I'm aware. Remain aware. And that in and of itself over time will cause your tendency to want to go back into older previous behaviors and fall back into the identification that was there before and bring it up again. You don't need to do that. You can simply be here, remain as aware as you can possibly be throughout all of your experiences. Know I am aware. Remain as quiet as possible, meaning not non-reactive. And that will undermine the tendency to identify, which it sounds like you're still having some tendency to identify with these behaviors from the past. So it's not a matter of not understanding something or changing something. It's really a matter of become more stable in the recognition that there is only one. I am that one. That awareness which is here now, that I know is here. This is the supreme consciousness. And anytime something clouds the awareness and tells me that I'm not that, that's my edge. But it's not my edge because I'm going to go into it and fall back into the old behaviors. It's my edge because I'm going to go into it if I need to, and I'm going to remember. There's the remembrance that there is only one self. There's only one awareness. Tat Tvam Asi. I am that, that which is aware is here now. And if you do this over and over repeatedly, what happens is those behaviors that tend to catch you and pull you back down into this previous way of being, they just dissipate. But it can take some time. So you have to do whatever you have to do.
Thank you.
But remain firm in the recognition that I am aware. Whatever is here, refer to the awareness. Don't refer to some set of rules or some set of ways to get the manifestation to work out the way you want, or just remain aware and let what wants to rise and show itself on the screen of awareness to rise, but don't attach to it, don't identify with it. Let that bubble pop and it will go away. And you are still here as being consciousness. You are still here as awareness. You were here before that arose, you are here after it arises. That which you are is eternal. It is here. There's nothing else to know but that. But you have to keep remembering that.
Yes. Well, I'm at a point where I can't forget. I've just everything else has just fallen away. So I thank you.
Yeah, that's the advantage that you have now, is that you can't forget.
And it's all fallen away where I can't even master the physical plane because that silence profoundly touched me so deeply, where it's like I have to do the reverse route of complete surrender and see what
Yeah.
happens. I'm
Yeah.
too far into this path. It's my soul knowing. So thank you. And I want to reflect what you said again to the group because it was so profound. Nothing takes the space. Nothing takes the space.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Very
I'll
good.
remember your words. Thank you.
Yes. Ram Ram. So one of the most profound understandings that you can have for yourself occurs when, as Frank said, you watch yourself get pulled back into some previous way of being, or some previous behavior, or some previous relationship, or some previous way of thinking. And even though you know on some very profound and deep level that you are awareness itself, life itself, even though you know that, you still get pulled back in. So the problem is not that you get pulled back in, it's that you don't yet understand how you get pulled back in. It's important to be aware enough that some little corner of your spacious being is always watching and noticing that when you think in a particular way, act in a particular way, subscribe to a certain belief, that it supports you in identifying with the body, with the mind, with the past, with a projection for the future. In that moment, you have forgotten the truth of your own being, which is you are infinite, spacious, open, loving, kind, eternal. This forgetting is the only thing, or the only activity you can say, that makes us think, I am not that. I am not being, consciousness, and bliss. This is just a misunderstanding, isn't it? Most of you know that now. To think that you are not the supreme, this is a form of identification with the unreal. Drop it. Don't drop the understanding that you are the one self. Drop the misunderstanding that you have forgotten something or lost something. So if you must work to put something down, don't put down the truth that you are being, consciousness, and bliss, that you are the supreme, that you are the open heart of being. put down the mistaken identity that you are human, male, female, young, old, rich, poor, from this country or that country. All of that is the appearance. The display of your misunderstanding. But everything that appears on the screen of awareness, on the screen of being, in the empty field of open awareness, that is who you are not. So keep remembering this. And you will just naturally, without doing anything, you will naturally fall back into this recognition of yourself as space, as being consciousness. You will be here as you are now, as awareness. When you ask yourself, am I aware? Instantly back, instantly here, didn't go anywhere. I am always here. That which is aware is always here. Frank, did you raise your hand again?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What I've noticed in the more dense identified states, I can feel specific contractions in my, as I say, solar plexus. So it's a physiological feeling of energy leaking from my body. And I know all the metaphysics, but right to the source. When I enter meditation and I ask, sometimes if the it feels like a parasite that's in my body leaking energy. So how do I move the energy? Do I lift up and absorb into space? If I were to enter, to raise into awareness,
So you are
what
looking, so when you engage in this activity, I'll just point out very quickly that you are looking at the object. You're looking at what feels like an experience. And I'm not saying it isn't, I'm saying, but that's where you're putting your focus. So open. You see, you are not the body. So the body is at a certain level in our sadhana, the body continually gives us this reinforcement for the idea that I am the body. And it does this in many different ways. And as we enter into more subtle play with the mind and body have these more subtle ways of attracting our attention. So the sadhana is still the same. Notice that you are looking at the object, whether it's a parasite or it's a feeling of bliss in your gut. You are looking at the object. Who is looking at the object? Find this one. Don't be concerned with the quality of any object. Return only to the self. What is aware of this? This one question will take you all the way. Hari Om. That's it.